With Cam Thomas being released from the Bucks and his NBA future being up in jeopardy, I wanted to talk about one of the archetypes that are kind of seeming to disappear from the league right now. And I kind of mentioned this in my center video, how the league's evolving, it's changing, it's going to move on to, we saw different eras where it was more dominated by wings and big forwards, guys that were trying to be like, Suedo LeBrons and Kevin Durant's, to guys that are now like big men who can do it all, And a big part of that is we're kind of seeing the death of the small guard, or not even just a small guard, but the score first small guard, especially. There's still a lot of small guards in the league, and a lot of that's going to also depend on how good they are. There's always going to be guys who can handle and finish the ball like Kyrie, who can shoot like Steph, or guys with unreal athleticism like Russ, guys that'll have MVP like seasons like Isaiah Thomas, explosive athletes, Derrick Rose, all that stuff. But we're going to start to see like those guards, when they're not like superstar level, we're going to start to see them kind of disappear and be phased out of the NBA. When you look at it, when you think about it, there's Cam Thomas, guys like Jordan Poole, Colin Sexton, Tyler Hero, to even a smaller mention, but he's not really a small guard. You can look at guys like Malik Monk, Anthony Simons too, guys that aren't even like 6'1" or anything. But I wanted to talk about how this archetype, even guys like Lou Williams as well, this archetype is kind of like phasing out. We're seeing even if you look at a guy like Allen Iverson, or guys like Jamal Crawford and Monte Ellis, like I feel like we're gonna go into that era where those type of guards won't be able to stay in the league for long. Jordan Clarkson too. We're gonna see teams kind of value them less and less. Quentin Grimes, like the more you talk about it, the more you think of examples, you're gonna see teams kind of value them less and less, because teams are going to want guys that can do more on the court. If they're not good offensively, they're going to want a guy, that can not just score, but can play make, like a guy like Trae Young, while even though he's small, it's like you want a guy that can do all of that while also being able to, score and pass as well. You want guys that can do all of that stuff at an elite level. You want guys that can sit there and make a play for not just themselves, but for their team around them. You want guys that are going to be able to, and even if they're not good enough offensively, you need a guy that can play defense as well. You need guys that can, make up for the fact that they're smaller, right? So I just wanted to say, like, that score first offensive guard is just like, we're going to see the death of it. We're going to see guys like that. We're going to see this happen where those guys can average those amount of points, but they're never going to have long-term team security. We're going to see guys like that who are going to be able to, make all those splash highlight plays, but they're just not going to be able to stay in the league for long. And I think the biggest example right now is kind of Cam Thomas. I think he's like probably the best example with it right now. So let's talk about it. So as we all know, Cam Thomas was just waived by the Bucks. Before that, he was waived by the Nets. And when you look at his game, when you watch film and everything on why he got waived, then it was more because he really wasn't contributing anything else that wasn't just scoring the basketball. And for a team like that, who's really trying to move on to a different direction, who's really trying to build up their future, and that means getting their young guards, getting certain guys getting more playing time and everything like that, it turns into a thing of, okay, I don't really need this guy just taking up shots, right? And then when he gets to the Bucks, you think, oh man, this team's really lacking in shot creation. This team's really lacking in, anything, right? This team's trying to contend. They need something, right? Maybe you think even if he doesn't have a starting role, he could be like an off the bench guy, give them like a real scorer off the bench, and that just doesn't work. And I think it's because of, certain things. Number one, as a small guard, trying to be a shot creator is always going to be like immensely way more difficult, right? You're going to be playing against guys who've got a couple inches on you, who can jump higher, who can run just as fast, if not faster than you can. So it's like when you create certain things of separation, you're just not gonna be able to get you're not gonna be able to get better looks at the basket, right? And we saw that a lot with his efficiency, right? Even with all the 30-point games, 40-point games, whatever, it was never really leading to wins. And And it doesn't help when you see certain things like kind of how he approached everything as well, because it seemed like there was a disconnect from him and the team as well, onto a thing of oh man, like I'm that guy, like I feel like I shouldn't be having to like change this stuff up, or I feel like I shouldn't have to do this, right? When you see things like him not really wanting to become more of a playmaker as well, it just hurts his stock. And then with the whole contract situation, with him turning down that contract, because obviously he felt like he probably deserved like way more, you know. I remember I even thought about like when his extensions was coming up and everything last year, I was like, man, like what's his market value? Because like, yeah, he has he's a 25 point per game scorer, but like doesn't really lead to winning, and he's not like some super efficient scorer. He's not like a guy like SGA or James Harden or Kyrie Irving, Steph Curry. You know, when you think of those all-time isolation scorers, you got to remember a lot of those all-time isolation scorers, Kevin Durant too, guys like that, like they have very good efficiency too. Like there's a reason they're so good at it, because those plays like SGA ISO is like one of the 3 most like efficient plays in basketball right now, right? A Steph Curry pick and roll is one of the 3 most efficient plays in basketball right now. You know, James Harden ISO was one of the most efficient plays in basketball during his MVP season. All of that, everything, right? So when you see that, and then when you compare it to Cam Thomas, his ISO plays, him, you know, chucking up shots, that just wasn't efficient enough, right? And then when you compare it to other like score first guards like that, you know, you look at a guy like Peyton Pritchard too, and you're like, oh man, why can't he do that? Well, there's a lot of things, you know, defense, pure shooting ability, you know. He doesn't seem like the type of guy he's as good as like a catch and shoot guy like that, and also it's just not that good at the whole like guard for whole score first, make a shot off the dribble. Like that tough shot diet isn't really going to be like the thing that you're going to be able to get on a team that's actually looking to contend, you know. Yeah, and it does suck to see, but I mean, it makes sense when you really look at the landscape of the NBA. You know, we're going into where most teams want to have like a guy, like have their go-to guy or go-to guys that they're like, okay, we're gonna put the ball in your hands. This kind of reminds me of the Josh Giddey situation with the OKC Thunder, where even though, yeah, this guy's pretty good with the ball in his hands because he's not really good off ball, I don't want him with the ball in his hands. I want SGA to have the ball in his hands. I want J-Dub to have the ball in his hands. And it's just like, and it's like, well, you can't really have this guy here if he's not going to do much. So you get rid of him, and then another teams are like, well, we don't want him to have the ball in his hands because now I feel like they feel like Kevin Porter Jr. is a better option. Ryan Rollins is having a really good season. You know, that's my pick for most improved player. And they're like, well, why would we take the ball out of his hands to put it in Cam Thomas's hands? You know, so it's certain stuff like that. And even then this year, he really wasn't shooting that well either, you know. So it's just it's hard to watch, because it's like I feel like we're gonna see this more and more as the league goes on. We're gonna see more and more of this like undersized guard not really making splashes in the league. You know, guys like this like kind of being phased out or being on real tight ropes. You know, like you even think of like the best of these guys, like a Malik Monk type of guy. Like even he doesn't have like a lot of long-term job security with teams because they're always looking to kind of like trade him. You know. So it's definitely surprising, because I definitely thought he was at least going to be here for a little bit longer, especially because he's not like, you know, not on an expensive contract, and I don't think he was going to get an expensive contract. So yeah, it's like we might have just seen the last of him in the NBA. Right? We really might have to be like thinking about it, like, yeah, this guy might not play for another NBA team. And now you can also think about it like, oh well, the Nets weren't that great of a situation, but Michael Porter Jr. is going over there and he's having like his best like season of his career, you know, and he's being allowed to do stuff like that. He's being allowed to go over there and and just ball, shoot, all that stuff. And it's just like Cam Thomas just isn't that efficient enough to warrant them building around that for the future, right? Yeah, So yeah, it does suck. And then you see certain like videos of, you know, especially that one where he's like standing at the top of the key and then passes it and then doesn't really look to, he passes a grenade to one of his teammates instead of just shooting the ball from deep, right? And he doesn't really provide much off-ball like action. You know, that's also a big thing. Like a lot of these guys are expected to have a lot of off-ball action. You know, that's how like certain guys stay in their rotation. You know, guys like from my Thunder, Jared McCain, Isaiah Joe, like their offense can be streaky at times. They consistently are good shooters when they get the chance to. But a big thing is you're not looking at them to be like, okay, you got to go ISO one-on-one, make a play. All of a sudden, you got to just play off ball, you know. And he didn't really seem to like have that. So, you know, it sucks, especially because I don't want to make any assumptions about what happens behind the scenes. Like, I hate when people do that because you really don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But it definitely did seem like all of this would make like a player and a franchise like kind of disconnected with each other. So, but yeah, I just wanted to talk about like the small guard, and I do think this whole like small guard that can only really score, I think this is a dying like archetype. Like we're not going to see this much, unless they're like elite, unless they're like all-star, you know. But thank you guys for listening as always, or watching, however you want to enjoy, and I will see you guys all later.